Welcome back to the Munn Avenue Muse podcast, brought to you by Munn, M-U-N-N, AvenuePress.com. We are a publisher and marketer of books worldwide, and I'm so delighted this morning to have with us Don Hurzeler, with whom we have worked on a couple of his many books, the last two. And Don is a retired executive. He is an NCAA All-American. He's a photographer, a writer, a world traveler, and just one of the most interesting people you'll ever meet. And so we are lucky to have Don with us today. Welcome, Don. Thank you so much for being here.
Aloha, Charlie. Good to be with you.
Thank you. And he said aloha because he's located in Hawaii, and it's 80 plus degrees there now, whereas I'm in New Jersey where it was 18 this morning. So we're going to all be a little jealous of Don at the moment. And maybe when you hear more about his travels, we'll be even more envious. Don, before we get into your books and so forth, why don't you just tell us a little more about your background? And it's so varied, so maybe you hit a couple of things that you think maybe most informed state of being. I mean, tell us a little more about you.
Charlie, I had a boss for 61 years. and the boss was, my parents, my teachers, my coaches. I had a lot of coaches, great coaches, I might say. And then my actual bosses at work. I was 40 years a corporate warrior. Started at the absolute bottom. I mean, hourly bottom of the company, and worked my way up to eventually CEO. And had a wonderful career. I loved it. It was grueling, as you can imagine. Traveled all the time, but I loved it. And at age 61, I retired and completely changed my life. My wife and I decided we were going to see what else we had in us. And so we had moved 14 times during our marriage, which is now, we've been married 55 years or something like that. 3 of them happily, and not lately, but no. We're it's a great partnership. She's a fabulous human being, and she's also a professional photographer and worldwide traveler. Was just named the U.S. Travel Photographer of the Year last year.
Wow.
Men and women. So she's really a fine photographer. So we said, well, let's see what else we've got in us, and we decided that we would move to Hawaii, where we knew no one, and bought a home. Actually, we rented for a few years, and then we bought a home, and found kind of our true love, which was photography. I had already been a writer, but I continued the writing, and we eventually teamed up with a gentleman named C.J. Cale, who's our fabulous partner, and created Lavalite Galleries. C.J. created Lavalite Galleries. We joined them, and so that's been an ongoing business for us for the past, 15 years or so. And it has created more opportunities than anything else in life. So here we are. I'm 77 now, and I'm having more fun than I've ever had in my life. I am not a denier of aging, and we can get into that as we go along. Aging will beat you up, and it certainly has me. But it doesn't beat the fun out of you. And so we're continuing, both Linda and I, to have the best time of our life. And right now we're in a heavy travel phase because at 77, I can see that travel's going to get maybe a little more difficult as time goes by. So we're trying to knock off maybe the most difficult ones, particularly in this current year of 2025.
Where are you planning to go?
We leave for Yellowstone. Speaking of 18 degrees, we leave for Yellowstone in about a week. We were there this year, or last year at this time. It was 36 below zero. It warmed up while we were there to 21 below zero. And so we know what we're in for. It's going to be cold, but the photography is fabulous. And for those of you who have been to Yellowstone and are just can't stand the crowds and all. If you go in January, there are no crowds. I remember last year we had one day where we saw 20 people the whole day, 20. So that's why we're going. We're going to have a great time. We get back from there. We're home a week or so. We head to Arctic Norway, Lofoten Islands, for a photo mission. We get done with that. We hit some of the big European cities, and then we end up at the Ice Hotel in Arctic Sweden for the aurora and everything they have to photograph there. We come back, and I'm home 3 days after being gone nearly a month, I guess. Home 3 days. And then I'm on a solo mission to the Atacama Desert and the Utsi Desert, I think it's called, in Bolivia. They are high-altitude deserts, 14,000 feet. I think it hasn't rained in 3,000 years there. It's got some of the most incredible, unique, odd photographic settings in the universe, featuring the Milky Way reflecting off of a salt flat with water on it. So can't wait for that. And then we end up at Lake Titicaca. We come back. We've got a couple of other smaller trips, and then a big month-long trip to Madagascar and some other places in the fall. So yeah,
wow,
we're going to be traveling.
That's quite a plan. And you know, you talk about Yellowstone in the winter. Some years ago, I was there in January, and I remember taking a ski-doo 70 miles into Yellowstone and seeing the buffalo herds, which I know you photographed beautifully.
Thank you.
And they are, in fact, in your new book, which I want to talk about, which is The Geezer's Guide to Adventure. That came out just about a month ago. We were honored to publish it with you, and tell us what inspired that book and a little bit more about that book. And by the way, The Geezer's Guide to Adventure is available on Amazon.com right now and BarnesandNoble.com and many other websites. So check it out. But tell us about it.
Well, let's go back to your going. You said a few years ago into Yellowstone in January.
Yeah.
See, you have more guts than I do, because I wouldn't have gone in there on a ski-doo. The diesel fumes and the whole smallness of it and the like, it was not appealing to me, so I never went. And now they have these beautiful, they're like jacked up buses. They're small, and they don't go over 25 miles an hour, and they feel perfectly safe. The only disadvantage that I have is, because we're photographers, you can't be getting in and out with your camera equipment without it fogging up. So we have to leave the windows open and the heater off the whole time. And we go, 8-10 hours a day. So Congratulations to you. You went under trying conditions, I think. Well, The Geezer's Guide, and with me being the geezer, is a book of encouragement. And it's a book to encourage people much younger than me, maybe even 50 and the like, to look at this upcoming part of their life and maybe even into retirement a little differently than maybe happened in my dad's days, where, you're going to retire. There's the porch. We'll get you a fishing pole. You can go down to the dock. Maybe you can bowl on Thursday. That is not what I am trying to accomplish in this upcoming part of my life. So I'm saying reconnect with your dreams. Now, I want to be realistic. I had dreams of pitching in the 7th game of the World Series for the Dodgers. I had dreams of winning an Olympic gold medal as a track runner. Those dreams are diminishing at 77. I don't think those are realistically going to happen. But by gosh, I've got a lot of other dreams. I've got places that I've seen on TV and read about and heard about that seem pretty hard to get to. But you know what? I'm going to get to them, and I'm going to go see them. And I've found a way, this was important for me, to make it financially able for me to do it. I can go and take pictures and sell them and sell the stories and the like, maybe even sell a book or two. And so, yeah, I'm just saying, don't let your dreams be dreams. Let them become reality. And if that says, well, I don't do new things well, I'm a little cautious. I'm getting more cautious as I get older. Read my book, because my book says, here's how you take on additional risk, and you do it slowly and incrementally in a smart way. Here's how you do so with a lot of safety involved, because a lot of the book is about doing these things that are safe. And I don't always do safe things. I do some things that aren't safe. I'm not encouraging people to do those. But I am saying to take on the things that, maybe swimming with a dolphin in the open ocean seems risky to you. Well, I can show you how to do that and to do it safely. And then lastly, I'm a savvy traveler. I've been to 112 countries or something like that, traveled my whole life, and I know how to save money doing everything having to do with travel. So
let's talk about that for a minute, because and you do bring it up in the book, some of the ways, because I'm sure some people are thinking about this, is like, wow, you're going to all these places, that must cost a lot of money. But you share some tips to saving money, like the national parks travel pass. And can you share a couple of those ideas that you incorporate in the book?
I got skinned alive on a previous book by one reader who had no money. And he said, it's a good book and I enjoyed it, but you wrote it for rich people. And it stung me for a couple of reasons. One was I had a whole chapter on how to do things for free, and I thought that was enough, but it wasn't. In looking back at it, he was right. I didn't write it for rich people, but I wrote it for people who did have means. This book, I took great care to say, we all arrive at these years in different states of condition. We may have disabilities. We may have disabilities, the likes of which make it impossible for us to do these things. I realize that. But I want to concentrate on what we can do, not what we can't do. So let's look at what we can do. And what we can do is take advantage of what's out there for us. The National Park System for seniors has a pass. I forget what it is these days, $80 or something like that, for a lifetime. When I got it, it was $10 or $20 for a lifetime, and I have worn it out. Just worn the numbers off of it.
Free admission to all the parks is
for you, your car, and everybody in it. It's unbelievable. I just absolutely love it. We've got a lot of great national parks. There are national parks all around the world. And if you happen to be a senior, even if you're visiting, in a lot of cases, they have either discounted or free admission. So national parks are kind of a key to this, and I spend a lot of time in the book on it. But there's many other travel tips on how to do things economically.
Yeah. So I would read the book both for me, Don, you and your story are incredibly inspiring. Because I'm up in your gray-haired age group, but also it's practical. I mean, there was another book we worked on together called Suddenly Retired, which has a lot of good advice on managing your finances as a retired person also. But keeping that spark and that interest to do things is fantastic. And also your website, Don, it has a lot of your photography in it, as do the books, or as does the Geezer's Guide. What's your website address if people want to look at some of the photography?
It's my name, Don, D-O-N, Hurzeler, H-U-R-Z-E-L-E-R, and that's all one word, donhurzeler.com. Or you can Google me up and I show up. And there's a active blog in there. I'm a storyteller, as you can tell. So there's a lot of stories. And it's kind of interesting, the blogs, I started off writing books that were career books. I had the #1 career book one year. And so it talks about how to deal with success and failure in your career, because if you have a long career, you're going to have to deal with both, and both of them will kill you if you allow it. So it starts off with that. I then got older, and I started writing about retirement, and I wrote a couple of 3 books about retirement. I then told some stories from my life because I wanted to put them out there and see if people liked them. I did 2 books like that. One I put out during the COVID time, and I had absolutely no competition, so it went to #1 on Amazon and stayed there forever. I did really well on that book because I had no competition. And it was a fun book. It was full of laughs. It's the stupidest book you've ever read in your life. But it talked about stories in my life, and it was fun. I then got greedy and thought, people like that. 6 months later, I'll put out another one that not even my mother read. It was the worst bomb in publishing history. So, I learned a little bit of a lesson about that. And then I put out a couple more retirement books, and now this geezer book, and then one book on just photos, which was a fancy book I did with our partner. So anyway, it's publishing is fun, as you know.
Yeah, and I'm looking at your book now, The Geezer's Guide, and you have pictures, some stunning pictures from Africa, Australia, of course, the national parks. It's really quite wonderful, and it's a relatively quick read, and it's just a delightful book.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
Charlie, the original title of it, and I forget if you and I knocked this around or not, but the original title was The Geezer's Guide to Safari. And because Lynn and I have been to all these countries, and we think the most interesting place that we've ever been on Earth, just by far, not even close, is Tanzania. We have fallen in love with Tanzania. It is remarkable, the diversity of animal life and topography and the people that are there. I've never been so blown away by a place, and I wanted to make it possible for lots and lots of people to go there. And you can spend $50,000 going on safari in Africa, and not many people are going to do that. Maybe a few people like me would, because I'm going to sell my prints and make my money back. But not a lot of people are going to spend a huge amount of money and go for, say, 6 weeks, as we did on one trip. So I came up with an idea of how to do it in 3 or 4 days for a few $1,000s and see everything in a genuine situation, not a zoo, not a national park where it's got paved roads and all that. Real, actual, out there in the jungle, if you will, and so there's a big section on that in the book. But then I got to thinking that's pretty narrow niche, so maybe I better expand it to all adventures. So that's how the book got its final name.
Well, and it's worldwide. It's far more than Africa in the book, and your photography is both. It's landscapes, it's animals, it's people. Even before this book, I was quite taken with your underwater photography. Living in Hawaii, you spend a fair amount of time underwater, I think. So at donhurzeler.com, you can see some of those magnificent photographs as well. So traveling is one great thing, but how do you write? What's your writing process like? And tell us your publishing journey. What is that like?
So everybody has their little talent in life, and my talent, one of my many talents, M-I-N-I, many talents, is how easy it is for me to write. I've written my whole life. I've driven my best friend, Mike Fales, out of his mind by sending him all my writing, and he can't even stand to look at it anymore. It is super simple for me to write, and so I'm writing all the time, and then it becomes a matter of being a smart editor and saying, well, this was fun to write, but nobody in the world wants to read this, so what 1% of this are we going to eventually publish. So that's where publishing comes in, and editing. I have a wonderful editor in Tanya, and have had other great editors over time, and they save me from myself. So writing is fun, and it's easy, and it's just part of my life. I do devote time to it. I lock the door. I tell my wife, what I'm going to be up to, and I write. I type everything I do. I type until my shoulders get cramped up and I can't do anymore, and then I put it aside until the next day. But you're a writer, the process. It's a lot of fun. I don't spend a lot of time sending it out to this person and that person, and what do you think? And let's send this to the reading group and all that. I send it to an editor who I trust, and that editor makes massive changes, corrects my English, fixes everything up, sends it back to me, and I accept it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it also brings up another good thing, which is as writers, we're responsible for coming up with the stories and the ideas and getting a first draft down. But it takes talented people to clean up our mess and make it make sense, and also a reader's perspective is different than a writer's perspective, so you need a sounding board of sorts. So whether it's an editor, and I do use I have a few trusted beta readers that I will send my manuscripts out to, who will give me detailed feedback. For those most of our listeners out there are authors, although there's many avid readers. But the kind of feedback I want to get is not, oh, well, that's great. I want, in chapter 2, you called this guy Stan, and in chapter 10, his name was Jerry, and it's the same guy,
Whoops.
How could, let me, interruption here. Let me,
it's Stan.
It's Stan calling. How could Mary be injured in the hospital one day and on a motorcycle riding out the next day? Those kinds of things that are actual errors that I have made in my manuscripts that were caught by various people.
Can I tell you a story about one of your previous guests and a mutual friend of ours?
Sure.
Steve Bennett. So, he is my muse, and I don't send him, well, I do sometimes, but I don't send him manuscripts and say, read this and let's talk about it. I call him up and say, I have this concept and I want to run it by you. And he doesn't typically ever comment on it. He just says, well, that's interesting. You and I don't exactly think alike. Can you do something for me? And I remember one that was very memorable. He said, I don't quite get what you're trying to do here. Let's do this. He says, I'm more of a visual person. Draw on one page your concept. And I said, I can't draw a stick man. I can't draw a circle on a page. He says, I'll send you an app, and on that app, it'll make it easier for you to draw. I want you to draw your concept, and then let's discuss it. So he sent it to me, and I drew the deal, and I looked at it, and then we talked, and I realized instantly it was a book that did not need to be written. Unfortunately, I'd already written it. So we discussed it further, and we both came to the conclusion that this was a book that had been written 500 times by other people, probably much better well-known people and the like, and it just did not deserve any air. And I literally hit the delete button. I don't even have a copy of it. It's gone completely. I took the printout, because I usually print them out. I don't do that anymore, but I used to print them out. I took the printout, put it through the shredder, and it's gone. That book is gone. I then wrote Smells Like Retirement. And it turned out to be a very helpful book for people who are entering retirement. So I use Steve like that. Steve can cause me to think differently, and I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, Steve has been extremely helpful for me. And Steve, by the way, builds websites for authors at authorbytes, BYTES.com. And we had him on a recent episode with his partner. And Steve, in fact, was the guy who caught the woman in the hospital getting on the motorcycle the next day for me. So that's our Steve, and had a lot to do with... well, he introduced us, you and me. So it's another thing I have to thank Steve for.
Yep.
Tell me what you're doing now. On your world travels, you're going to be photographing many things, right? I mean, your trips are grounded by photography. Isn't that the case? I mean, isn't that...
They truly are. We don't go on cruises and trips down the Danube and all, and we've done that. We love it. We may do some more of it, but right now we are in the photography business big time, and we like to do unique things that other people can't get to, and do them properly. I go with experts. I don't just say, gee, I'll go to the Lofoten Islands and this ought to turn out fine. I couldn't find the Lofoten Islands on a globe, so I've got to have somebody take me there and know what time the Milky Way comes up and where it's going to be, and is there going to be an aurora tonight, and what kind of clothing to wear and the like. So I take experts and they help me. So that's what we're doing now. They are not leisurely vacations. Although for the amount of money that we have to spend to go to the ice hotel for a couple of nights, we're gonna use that for a little bit of luxury. But normally we're kind of out before dawn and back in at 2 in the morning, and see if we can get a nap along the way.
Well, there's I think there's a few lessons for all of us in there. One is that it's great to have a reason to travel, right? Something that you want to do. And the second part, and I found this to be the case with me too, is that if you're going to somewhere brand new, it helps to have a guide. If there's somebody who can help you, and if it's simply a tour guide, great. But I periodically go on fly fishing trips with my older son, and we always have a guide because we don't know where in the river the fish are, or last time we went fishing in an incredible river in Northern California, and my son said, I really want to go in the middle of the night with this famous hatch. It's called a hex hatch of these hex flies, and the guy took us out in the middle of the night, and for 20 minutes I've never seen fish flying out of the water like that. So
wow.
Yeah. And maybe the third thing too, which may be the hardest thing for people who are retired, but maybe even young people, is pushing yourself a little outside your comfort zone. Right? I mean,
Absolutely.
Because it's very easy to just sort of sit in front of the TV, or go to the same places. And if you don't push and expand, you tend to contract. Don't you find that to be the case? And we know
100%
people in our age group who contract, they withdraw, whereas being out and among people and doing things and having vocation/avocation. In your case, it's photography. Me, it's writing, publishing, and occasionally going on a river to have some fun. That keeps your life really rich. I've read studies that actually the happiest age group is the over 60 age group.
Well, it's certainly the case for us, that's for sure.
I mean, because when you're a teenager, you've got all that adolescent angst, and when you're in your 30s and 40s, maybe you're dealing with romantic relationships, maybe you're married, maybe you're bringing up kids, you're trying to grow a career, and all of those things have their own built-in challenges to them. But when you get over 60, even if you're still working pretty much full-time like I am, you have a lot more freedom, in a sense, to do these things.
Charlie, let me kind of circle back on something. It makes it sound, when I say I'm up before dawn and back in by 2 a.m. and all that, makes it sound like I'm just, going all the time. In one of my books, maybe two of my books, I've written a chapter called 2 Words You Need to Know in Retirement: Nap and No. Would you like to be on the homeowners board? No. Why? I'm going to be taking a nap. That's why. So when we're back in Hawaii, I live a very lazy life here. I'm enjoying the heck out of this, and I'm going to have a great time. I'll probably have a cup of coffee and go right back to bed for an hour when we're done, because I can. And so, that part of it is really good. People around me, my longest term friends and the like, I do often see kind of shying away from things. And so there's a big section in the book that says, hey, if you want some more adventure in your life, don't just go out with Don and jump out 10 miles in the ocean with a bunch of dangerous sharks and see how you do. That's not going to turn out well for anybody. Let's start off with dolphin, and let's go snorkeling, and let's maybe work our way up to going in with manta rays, which cannot hurt you, and we'll work our way up to sharks that are friendly and the like. And then if you're crazy enough, then somewhere down the road we can, I can get you in with a more dangerous situation, but I'm going to surround you with experts to keep you safe. And I'm not going to let you go out there until you're prepared to do that and come home. So, there's a process to it. And if you don't follow that process, you'll get hurt. If you don't try that process, I agree with you. I think you're going to shrink your life.
Now, I can't help it, Don, but because you have so many great stories, but I think I'm going to ask you to share one of them. And I didn't prepare you in advance, but one of the amazing things that I know you do is you do a lot of photography in and around the volcanoes of Hawaii. Told me a harrowing story about falling into a volcano. Is that true? Am I remembering it correctly?
Almost correctly. We have an eruption going right now. I think this morning it's on pause, but it's likely to come back on.
Now, which island is that on, and what
it's
volcano?
On the Big Island of Hawaii,
right.
In the Volcanoes National Park, at the Halemaumau crater that many visitors to our island have been to, and so
I've been there too.
Yep, and periodically it goes on and it fills up the bottom with liquid lava. And as recently as a week or two ago, it's been shooting 250 feet up in the air. It's an amazing sight to see. I am mesmerized by it, and typically when it's going, I will leave the house here at midnight. I will get out there. It's about 2 hours for me to get out there. I'll get out there at 2 in the morning. I'll photograph until 4:30 in the morning, and then about the time that all the visitors come to photograph the rising sun, I've already got my photos because they've actually missed the good light, and they're going to get the more harsh light. So I leave about 4:30. So I love it. It's so good. That's one way to view it. You can go and kind of look into it from very safe vantage points. The other way to do it is if it has gotten out of Halemaumau and gone through a system that takes it over through another vent called Pu'o'o and then leaks out from there and heads toward the ocean. So some of it's underground, some of it's on the ground. We hike out to that, and sometimes those hikes are 5 miles. We do them in the middle of the night over rough lava, and they are the craziest things you've ever seen and quite dangerous in some circumstances. Not so dangerous. I haven't taken my grandkids out there when they were 10, and I took my parents out there when they were in their 80s, but those were pretty mild situations. We get some that are not mild. And on one of those, I was walking along, and my partner, CJ, was literally 2 feet in front of me. And dark as the inside of a cow, no moon, completely nothing to point at, no lights of any kind. And my little headlamp saw his T-shirt just disappear. And he had taken one wrong step and something gave way. And he went down, we always argue about this, 20 to 30 feet into a crevice. There was no live lava in it, thank goodness. Could have been, but there was not. I thought he was dead. It knocked him out. And long story short, compound fracture of the ankle. Took us hours to get him out. Took us hours to get him out of there and to a hospital and to put him back together. So that can happen. We had a friend of ours die from the gases out there. It's a dangerous environment. It's also one of the most interesting environments on Earth.
Yeah, I bet. And I know on your website there's some fabulous dramatic volcano pictures as well. So
thanks.
Check that out. And Don's book, the new book, The Geezer's Guide to Adventure, again, is on Amazon.com, as is available also BarnesandNoble.com, and will be appearing shortly on bookshop.org and some other websites around the world. So Don, anything new you're working on? What's the next project going to be? Do you know yet?
Yes, I do, and it's thanks to you, actually. So you and I experimented with putting photos in this book, and we found early on a few little minor problems, which you've solved. Thank you very much. Very, very pleased with particularly the Barnes & Noble printing, but also Amazon. Those are looking good now. So I want to do bigger photos, and I've got a couple of novel approaches that I want to run by you down the road. Not quite yet, but when I get back from these massive trips, I've got some ideas on how to get prints to people more economically than they've been able to get them in the past. The stuff we sell in our gallery is pretty big and expensive. We not expensive compared to our competition, but expensive, and we print them on metal. So a lot of people can't afford that, and I'd like to find another way to help people afford, some of these prints that may interest them. So I think that's going to be the next focus, is how to do bigger prints and to do them in such a way that people can enjoy them in a number of different ways.
Well, I look forward to seeing that, and hopefully I can hang one of those on my wall.
Good.
So, Don, thank you so much for joining us today and being part of this podcast. I hope for the people listening out there, you find Don's story as inspiring as I do.
Well, your story is inspiring as well, and I think for a couple of people well along in life that we've found ways to make it through life with a smile on our face and something positive to do. And I think that's going to serve us well as we go along. So I'm looking forward to continuing a friendship and making it a very long friendship.
Me too. And for those of you who are listening, if you have some inspirational story, you can add it in the comments below if you're listening on Substack or YouTube. Feel free to share a story or two with us. So this was brought to you by the Munn Avenue Muse, munnavenuemuse.com, if you want to check us out there. And if you have a book or an idea that you would like to share with me, you can contact me at munnavenuepress.com. And I'll look forward to seeing what you come up with for the next book, Don. Thank you again.
Thank you, and aloha.